What if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do for your muscles happens while you're asleep? Not in the gym, not with another supplement, but with one simple, real food before bed that supports muscle repair, hormone balance, and metabolic health, naturally. Let's talk about what your body actually needs at night, and why most people are doing this completely wrong. Tonight, as you fall asleep, something extraordinary is supposed to happen inside your body, something most people never even realize is taking place, because while you think you are simply resting, your body is entering one of the most metabolically active repair cycles of the entire day. A cycle where damaged muscle fibers are dismantled, rebuilt, and strengthened, where microscopic tears from daily life are repaired, where enzymes switch on, hormones surge, and your biology prepares you to wake up stronger than you were before you closed your eyes. But here is the problem that almost no one talks about. If your body does not have the raw materials it needs during this window, it does not pause the repair process, it cannibalizes you to complete it. During sleep, you are in the longest fasting state of the day, often 7 to 9 hours without incoming nutrition, and research in human metabolism shows that when circulating amino acids drop too low, the body maintains essential functions by breaking down skeletal muscle to release those amino acids into the bloodstream, a process called nocturnal muscle protein breakdown. And this is not a rare emergency mechanism. It is a normal survival response that happens every single night in people who go to bed underfueled. In other words, your body is not being wasteful. It is being efficient. It is choosing survival over strength, sacrificing metabolically expensive muscle tissue to keep blood sugar stable, to support brain function, to maintain immune activity, because from an evolutionary perspective, preserving life always mattered more than preserving lean mass. Studies measuring nitrogen balance and overnight protein turnover show that without available dietary protein, the body shifts into a net negative muscle protein balance, meaning more muscle is broken down than rebuilt. And this effect becomes even more pronounced as we age, when anabolic resistance makes it harder for the body to rebuild tissue unless sufficient amino acids are present for long durations. This is why so many people train hard, eat well during the day, yet still struggle with recovery, still feel weaker over time, still notice gradual muscle loss despite doing everything right, because they unknowingly spend a third of their life in a physiological state that works against them. Imagine renovating a building every night but running out of bricks halfway through. So instead of finishing the repair, workers start pulling bricks from the foundation just to keep going. That is exactly what your body does when you sleep without nutritional support. And over months and years, that silent borrowing adds up to measurable loss of strength, reduced metabolic rate, increased injury risk, and accelerated aging. Providing protein before sleep changes this entire equation by supplying a slow, steady release of amino acids into the bloodstream, allowing the body to remain in a positive repair state instead of a destructive one, turning the night from a period of breakdown into a period of construction. And when that shift happens consistently, night after night, you are no longer losing ground while you sleep. You are finally allowing your biology to do what it was designed to do all along: rebuild you. Every night, without your permission and without your awareness, your body releases one of the most powerful anti-aging, muscle-preserving, fat-burning hormones it will ever produce. And that hormone is not testosterone, not insulin, not cortisol, but growth hormone, a master regulator that determines whether your body repairs itself or slowly breaks down over time. And here's the shocking part. Most adults barely produce a fraction of what they are biologically capable of, not because of age alone, but because of what they do in the hours before sleep. Human physiology is wired so that the largest pulse of growth hormone occurs shortly after you fall into deep sleep, especially during slow-wave sleep. And this pulse is not optional, it is essential, because growth hormone drives muscle protein synthesis, accelerates tissue repair, mobilizes fat for fuel, strengthens connective tissue, and protects against age-related muscle loss. Yet this system is incredibly fragile because growth hormone is directly suppressed by elevated insulin and unstable blood sugar. Research in endocrinology has shown that even modest nighttime insulin spikes can significantly blunt growth hormone release, meaning your body may enter sleep without ever turning on its primary repair signal. This is why eating sugar, refined carbohydrates, or even large carb-heavy meals late at night does not just affect your waistline. It directly sabotages your ability to recover, because insulin and growth hormone act like opposing switches. When one is high, the other is forced down. Over time, this hormonal suppression translates into slower muscle repair, poorer recovery from exercise, increased fat storage, and a steady decline in strength that many people wrongly attribute to normal aging. What makes this even more alarming is that growth hormone naturally declines with age, dropping as much as 50% by middle age. So when older adults stack poor nighttime nutrition on top of an already weakened signal, the loss compounds year after year, accelerating sarcopenia, frailty, and metabolic dysfunction. But here is where biology offers a powerful intervention. Protein and natural fat before bed support growth hormone release rather than suppress it, because they create minimal insulin response while providing the amino acids needed for tissue repair, allowing the brain to enter deep sleep without hormonal interference. Studies examining nighttime metabolism show that stable blood glucose levels are strongly associated with longer periods of slow-wave sleep, the exact phase where growth hormone secretion peaks, meaning what you eat before bed, can literally determine how long your body stays in its most restorative state. This is not theory, this is measurable physiology. And when insulin remains low, growth hormone is free to surge, signaling the body to rebuild muscle fibers, strengthen bones, repair connective tissue, and shift energy usage toward fat rather than muscle. Over weeks and months, this hormonal environment reshapes the body from the inside out, preserving lean mass, improving recovery, and slowing the biological clock in ways no supplement can replicate. The tragedy is that most people unknowingly shut this system down every single night with late-night snacks that feel harmless but act like a hormonal off switch, stealing recovery while they sleep. When you align your nighttime nutrition with your biology, you are not hacking your body, you are removing the interference. And when growth hormone is finally allowed to do its job, sleep stops being passive rest and becomes active repair, quietly rebuilding you night after night. While you sleep, your body's not simply resting, it is conducting one of the most complex biochemical operations in human physiology, a carefully timed process of repair that depends entirely on whether nutrients remain available in your bloodstream hour after hour. Because muscle rebuilding is not a single event, it is a sustained conversation between your cells and the amino acids that feed them. And when that conversation is interrupted, the repair process weakens or stops altogether. Most people imagine digestion as something that ends shortly after a meal. But research in metabolic physiology shows that whole foods, especially those containing natural protein and fat, digest slowly and release amino acids gradually over several hours, creating what scientists call a prolonged anabolic environment, a state in which the body can continuously rebuild tissue instead of scrambling to find resources. This slow release is crucial during sleep because muscle protein synthesis is not a switch that flips on once and finishes. It is a cycle that repeats throughout the night, requiring a steady supply of leucine and other essential amino acids to keep signaling pathways like mTOR activated, the very pathways responsible for repairing and strengthening muscle fibers. When those amino acids disappear too quickly, as they often do after fast-digesting processed foods or liquid protein drinks, the signal fades and the body drifts back toward breakdown instead of construction. Clinical studies comparing fast-digesting proteins to slower, whole food sources show that rapid absorption leads to a short spike in amino acid availability followed by a long period of deficit, whereas slower digestion maintains elevated amino acid levels for up to 7 hours, covering nearly the entire sleep cycle and allowing repair to continue uninterrupted. That difference may sound small, but across months and years it determines whether the body maintains lean mass or gradually loses it, especially as we age and our ability to stimulate muscle repair becomes less responsive. Think of it like fueling a fire, where a quick-burning paper flare produces a brief burst of heat before going cold, while a dense log burns slowly through the night, providing steady warmth that never collapses into darkness. And your muscles require that slow-burning fuel if they are to rebuild effectively. This is why populations consuming minimally processed, protein-rich evening meals historically maintained strength and physical resilience without the need for engineered supplements because their bodies receive nutrition in the form evolution expected, slow, sustained, and metabolically stable. Modern eating patterns, built around convenience foods and rapid absorption, unintentionally rob the body of this steady nourishment, leaving long stretches of the night where no building material is available, forcing the system to compromise repair or reclaim amino acids from existing tissue. The result is subtle but cumulative: less complete recovery after activity, gradual declines in strength, increased soreness, and over time, measurable losses in muscle quality that many mistake for unavoidable aging. When slow digesting, whole food protein is present before sleep, the bloodstream becomes a reservoir of repair molecules, allowing your biology to work continuously rather than intermittently, transforming the night into a sustained rebuilding phase instead of a stop-and-start struggle for resources. And in that quiet, unseen stretch of hours, consistency becomes strength, not because of what you do while awake, but because of what your body is finally able to do without interruption. As night falls and you prepare to sleep, your body begins a delicate balancing act with blood sugar, one that will determine whether the coming hours are spent in deep restoration or silent physiological stress. Because while you are lying still in the dark, your metabolism is anything but inactive, constantly regulating glucose levels to keep your brain alive and your cells functioning. The human brain alone consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy even during sleep, and it demands a steady supply of glucose. But when blood sugar swings too high or crashes too low, the body interprets this instability as a threat, triggering a cascade of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline designed to bring glucose back into range. Research in sleep medicine has shown that these nighttime glucose fluctuations are strongly associated with fragmented sleep, increased awakenings, and reduced time spent in the deep, slow-wave stages that are essential for muscle repair and metabolic recovery. In other words, unstable blood sugar doesn't just affect people with diabetes. It can quietly sabotage anyone's ability to recover overnight. When someone eats refined carbohydrates or sugary snacks late in the evening, blood glucose rises rapidly, prompting a surge of insulin to clear it from the bloodstream. But this rapid correction often overshoots, causing a drop in blood sugar that forces the body to release cortisol to compensate. And cortisol, even in small nocturnal elevations, is profoundly catabolic, meaning it encourages the breakdown of muscle tissue while simultaneously impairing the body's natural repair processes. Studies have demonstrated that elevated nighttime cortisol is linked to reduced protein synthesis, poorer recovery from physical activity, and increased fat storage, particularly around the abdomen, because the body shifts into a defensive metabolic mode rather than a rebuilding one. This is why so many people wake feeling unrefreshed. Despite spending enough hours in bed, their physiology has been fighting to maintain balance rather than using that time to restore. In contrast, when evening nutrition consists of protein and healthy fats, digestion occurs slowly, glucose enters the bloodstream gradually, and insulin remains low and stable, allowing the body to maintain what researchers call glycemic control throughout the night, a state strongly correlated with longer, uninterrupted sleep cycles and improved anabolic signaling. Stable blood sugar means the brain does not need to sound an alarm, cortisol remains quiet, and the body can devote its resources to repairing muscle fibers, replenishing cellular energy stores, and regulating metabolism instead of managing a crisis. Over time, this nightly stability has measurable effects: improved insulin sensitivity, better body composition, and reduced risk of metabolic disorders that are increasingly linked to chronic sleep disruption. The tragedy is that modern dietary habits, shaped by convenience and late-night eating culture, repeatedly provoke these glucose roller coasters, turning what should be the most restorative hours into a period of hidden metabolic strain. When blood sugar remains steady, sleep deepens, hormones align, and the body finally enters the calm internal environment it requires to rebuild, proving that true overnight recovery is not just about how long you sleep, but about the metabolic stability you carry with you into the night. Beginning around the age of 30, something quiet and almost invisible begins to happen inside the human body, a gradual loss of muscle tissue so subtle that most people never notice it year to year. Yet by the time they reach their 60s, they may have lost up to a third of their original strength, a condition known as age-related muscle loss, or sarcopenia. And despite how common it is, this is not simply the unavoidable march of time. It is largely driven by how modern lifestyles fail to support the biology that once protected our muscles for a lifetime. Muscle is not just for movement or appearance. It is one of the body's most important metabolic organs, regulating blood sugar, supporting joint stability, protecting against falls, and even influencing immune function, which is why research consistently shows that individuals with greater muscle mass have lower risks of chronic disease, disability, and premature death. Yet as we age, the body becomes less responsive to protein intake, a phenomenon called anabolic resistance, meaning the same meal that once stimulated strong muscle repair in youth now produces a weaker signal, requiring more consistent amino acid availability to achieve the same rebuilding effect. When the overnight fasting window passes without nutritional support, older adults are especially vulnerable to entering a negative protein balance, where muscle breakdown exceeds muscle synthesis for hours at a time, and this repeated imbalance night after night accelerates physical decline in a way that feels mysterious but is deeply biological. Clinical studies using tracer methodologies have shown that aging muscle requires prolonged exposure to essential amino acids, particularly leucine, to fully activate the repair machinery responsible for maintaining strength and function. Yet typical eating patterns concentrate protein earlier in the day and leave the longest stretch of recovery, the sleep period, completely unsupported. This mismatch between when the body needs nutrients most and when it actually receives them creates a slow erosion of tissue that no amount of occasional exercise can fully counteract. The consequences extend far beyond aesthetics because muscle loss is strongly associated with reduced mobility, increased risk of fractures, slower healing, and loss of independence, outcomes that many assume are inevitable aspects of aging rather than the result of decades of inadequate nighttime recovery. Providing protein before sleep directly addresses this vulnerability by extending the window of amino acid availability into the hours when the body is actively repairing itself, helping to overcome anabolic resistance and maintain a positive muscle-building environment even in later decades of life. Longitudinal research has demonstrated that individuals who distribute protein intake more evenly, including in the evening, preserve lean mass more effectively and maintain better functional strength compared to those who consume the majority earlier in the day. This means that what seems like a small nutritional decision can influence whether aging is accompanied by resilience or fragility, whether muscles remain capable of supporting an active life or gradually fade through disuse and undernourishment. The body is always trying to renew itself, even in older age, but it can only rebuild with the materials it is given. And when those materials are present during the long hours of sleep, the process of aging begins to look less like inevitable decline and more like something we can profoundly influence. Late at night, when the house is quiet and the day feels finished, a powerful biological signal begins to rise in the body, a signal that most people mistake for simple hunger, but is actually a complex hormonal conversation driven by ghrelin, leptin, insulin, and dopamine, all working together to determine whether you continue eating or finally allow your metabolism to rest. Ghrelin, often called the hunger hormone, naturally increases in the evening as part of your circadian rhythm, but its intensity is dramatically amplified when earlier meals were dominated by refined carbohydrates or lacked sufficient protein, creating a neurological drive to seek more food even when caloric needs have already been met. Studies in appetite regulation show that low-protein diets can increase subsequent calorie intake by as much as 20%, because the brain continues signaling hunger until it receives enough essential amino acids to meet repair demands, a mechanism sometimes described as protein leverage, where the body pushes you to keep eating until nutritional requirements are satisfied. This explains why late-night snacking is rarely about willpower and more often about unresolved biology, a survival system trying to correct what it perceives as incomplete nourishment. When people reach for sugary snacks or processed foods in response, the rapid dopamine release reinforces the behavior neurologically, wiring the brain to associate nighttime with reward-seeking rather than restoration, a feedback loop that research has linked to disrupted sleep patterns, weight gain, and impaired metabolic health. Each spike of sugar not only elevates insulin but also suppresses leptin, the hormone responsible for signaling fullness, delaying satiety, and encouraging continued consumption in a cycle that can extend right up until sleep. This metabolic confusion does more than add calories. It keeps the digestive system active, raises body temperature, and interferes with melatonin production, all of which reduce sleep quality and limit the body's ability to enter deep, restorative phases. In contrast, consuming a modest portion of protein with natural fat before bed triggers a very different hormonal cascade, one that increases peptide YY and supports leptin signaling, both associated with feelings of satiety and calm, effectively telling the brain that nutritional needs have been met and that it is safe to power down. Research comparing macronutrient effects on appetite has shown that protein consistently produces the greatest reduction in nighttime hunger and the strongest stabilization of next morning glucose levels, meaning this single choice can influence not only sleep but also metabolic control the following day. Instead of a roller coaster of cravings and hormonal noise, the body enters a parasympathetic state, often called rest and digest, where heart rate slows, stress signaling declines, and the internal environment shifts toward repair rather than stimulation. Over time, this pattern retrains the brain to dissociate nighttime from compulsive eating and reconnect it with recovery, reducing the behavioral and biochemical drivers of late-night snacking without conscious restriction. What feels like a small nutritional adjustment becomes a powerful signal of safety to the body, assuring it that resources are available, that no emergency foraging is required, and that it can move fully into the regenerative processes that modern habits so often interrupt, transforming the final hours of the day from a battle with cravings into a gateway for healing.